I'm gonna be honest with you guys, I kinda hate talking about film gear. Mainly because I've seen so many amazing creators create incredible work with little to no gear and a cheap camera. And every single time, storytelling, lighting, composition, those are the things that really matter when you talk about telling great stories. So when it comes to film gear, the only time that I stop and I make a video about it is because I realize that one or multiple pieces of gear really help me elevate my craft. And not just because it's a shiny new camera, but it's mainly something that actually makes me think about telling a story a different way or lighting a scene a different way. This video is brought to you by Skillshare, but more on that later. In the last few months, I've been really trying to level up my cinematography. As you guys can see, I've been posting different lighting breakdowns and lighting tutorials and stuff, and I've just been doing a ton of research and experimentation with a bunch of different film gear that I've bought over the last couple of months has really allowed me to approach lighting and cinematography in a different way. So we're gonna break down this list of gear that I bought over the last couple of months that's really helped me improve my cinematography, and hopefully it helps you guys as well. So the first piece of gear that I think is gonna be really valuable to any cinematographer is gonna be a strong, powerful light. And what I mean by that is something around the 300 to 600 watt range, or maybe even upwards to 1200 watts. And the reason why I suggest this, and one of the first pieces of gear that you should buy as a cinematographer, is because there's gonna be so many times where you're gonna be battling the sun, or you're gonna have to expose for lights that you can't control in your scene. And the only way to do that is by stopping your camera down. And then your subject, more often than not, tends to be really dark. So the only way to properly expose and balance your image is to have a really strong, powerful light to bring them back up. My suggestion is look into getting yourself a 300 watt, a 600 watt, or maybe even a 1200 watt if you have the money for it, because I promise you guys, as we go through the different lighting techniques that I'm gonna talk about in this video, having a strong, powerful light is gonna help you in so many different ways, and it's gonna give you the flexibility to kind of grow with that light as your knowledge improves and as you start to experiment with different lighting techniques. One light that I've been using for like the last year has been this GVM 650B. I was always skeptical about using GVM lights just because when I first started, I bought like their cheap little LED panel lights, and those weren't really great at all, but this Pro Series that they put out is actually really, really good. I recommend it, but also you have other companies like Aperture is like a cornerstone in the filmmaking market, and then Nanlite has some really good stuff. So I would check out those three companies, and I'll drop links down below so you guys can check out those. And if you guys want to buy from those links, obviously it helps and supports the channel. Now, a really big reason why I suggest getting a really strong, powerful light is because I've been trying out new lighting techniques. And one of the lighting techniques that I've been trying as of lately has been, using book lights to light interviews and certain scenes. And in order to properly execute a book light, you need a strong, powerful light. And a lot of the times, even a 300 isn't gonna cut it. And in order to create an effective book light, not only do you need a powerful light, but you also need a bounce. Now, there's a lot of different options to bounce light. You could use foam boards, you could use ultra bounces, but something that I have found that has been really awesome for me and my workflow has been using this 4x4 floppy unbleached muslin bounce. And the reason why I chose unbleached muslin is because it's a little bit warmer, it's a little bit softer than just using a white bounce. I just feel personally that shooting off this unbleached muslin just gives that really natural, warm look, especially in like daylight interiors. And I have to say, guys, this has been one thing that's really blown my mind in terms of how I approach lighting and how I think about lighting. Now, if you guys are going for a more soft and natural look, bouncing light and shooting it indirectly back into your subject is gonna give a little bit more of a nicer, softer look than if you were to use something like a diffuser or a softbox. And you could really tell the difference in the shadow roll-off that you get. And if you look at this example right here that we just shot in the studio, here's the difference between shooting it on a softbox and shooting it through a book light. Now, in order to fully execute a proper book light, not only do you need a powerful light and not only do you need a bounce, but you also need something called a grid cloth. And basically what this is just a thin layer of diffusion, just like you would put on something like a softbox or a light dome, and it helps diffuse the light. But you could buy one of these grid cloths and create this big source of light. Now, for some of you guys that don't know, the bigger the source of light, the softer and more natural it's gonna look on your subject. Going back to the shot that we got in the studio, this is what it looks like with the book light. As you can see, there's a real gradual roll off in the shadows that feels natural and not too contrasty. And the thing is that there's a time and place to use this. I'm not saying that you should go out and always use a book light. There's definitely a time and place and a look that you're trying to achieve, right? So like if you're going for a more natural daylight interior look, using a book light is definitely gonna help you guys get that, natural shadow roll off and a much softer look. But if you want a more contrasty kind of dramatic look, then maybe a smaller source like a light dome is gonna help you create that contrast that you're looking for. So it really depends on the storytelling and the environment and what it is that you're trying to achieve. Now, since we're talking about shadows, the one thing that can help you guys really shape your shadows in your shot is something called a negative fill. And what I typically have used in the past for negative fill is just a black fabric that I hang across a C-stand, and I use it to kind of absorb light and create shadows on my subject, which is extremely important when it comes to creating depth in your scene. Now, until a couple of months ago, I really didn't think it was necessary to spend money on a floppy that was just a negative fill. But when I got this thing and I invested in it and I was like, you know what, let me give it a try, I realized how powerful this tool really is. And the reason why I love it is because, it has the top hinges that you could bring down and you could literally hang this at any angle over your subject, and it really gives you the ability to cut and shape light. And I'm not gonna lie to you guys, it kind of sucks in the beginning because you're like, it's just shy of 200 bucks to buy one of these things, but I gotta be honest, this is one of the best investments I've ever made. Not only does it give another layer of professionalism when I step on set and I'm using something like this over like black flat fabric just hanging on a C-stand, but it also it allows me to really control and really shape the shadow on my subject's face. And if I do need to cut the light overhead, the only way to do that is by having one of these, because you could literally put it at a 90-degree angle and hang it right over their head and really shape all of the light around them, which is extremely important when you are getting into the subtleties and the details of cinematography. Now, if you guys want to learn more about the filmmaking gear you need to make better films and improve your cinematography, then you got to check out Skillshare. Skillshare is an online learning community with thousands of classes for creators. You can learn everything from directing to cinematography and even the film gear you need to produce your projects. And what I love about Skillshare is that you have the ability to follow their design learning paths that can take you from novice to expert, with their hand-picked classes that build upon one another. And Skillshare is packed with a ton of YouTubers that I already love learning from creators like Marquise Brownlee to Jordy Vandepew and many more. Skillshare offers so many different talented and accomplished instructors to learn from. One class that I have been learning a lot from has been this course from Joe Simon, Cinematography to Convey Emotion. He does a great job at really breaking down the basics of cinematography. So if you guys want to take your career or side hustle to the next level, Skillshare is an incredible place to start. And right now, the first 500 people that use my link in the description below will receive the first month for free. So get on over there and check out Skillshare today. All right, now, one of my favorite pieces of gear on this list is a Haze Machine. For those of you who have never used a Haze Machine, I gotta be real with you, it's awesome. And the reason why a Haze Machine is so great is because it creates more depth to your shot. Because the light has to pass through the haze to get to the sensor, that ultimately creates a really soft diffusion for the light. The further that light has to travel through the diffusion, the more color and sharpness it tends to lose, which pretty much means that your subject is gonna be sharper than the background. It's also really great for creating interesting light rays, and if you really want that dreamy effect, there's nothing better than using haze. But obviously, just like with anything, there's a time and place for it, so I really think that you could easily overuse this in your shot, and if you're not careful, it could really ruin the kind of look and the feel that you're going for. But if you guys are going for that more diffused and softer kind of look, especially when you're trying to create depth from your subject in the background, haze is a great tool for that. Now, the last piece of cinematography gear that I have found that has tremendously helped me over the last year has been this projector mount. And the projector mount that I've been using, and the one that I'm talking about today, is this Nanlite Projector attachment. It's easily one of my favorite pieces of gear I own. And the reason why it's so awesome is because it's so versatile. If the blades are wide open, it creates like a spotlight. But if you start manipulating the blades and moving them around, you could really cut and shape the light to anything that you want. Not to mention that you could also put gobos? Is it bogos or gobos? In any case, you could put those inside the light and create these really interesting different shapes. And then on top of it, you can mess with the lens to really have a sharp line. Like you guys can see back here, I have like a really sharp line of streak of light coming across. Or you can make it kind of really blurry and out of focus, which is just an incredible tool to use. I used it a ton in this car scene that I shot, and I've used it all over my documentary projects in the last year. And I'm really just finding that there's so many different ways to use this thing, and you could create some really interesting shots, and something that I definitely recommend. I want to thank you guys so much for stopping in and hanging out, talking about all this really awesome gear. Again, guys, I don't really love talking about gear, and this is something that I only bring out once in a while when I truly believe that this stuff can really elevate your work and take it to the next level. So hopefully it does. Hopefully you found it as useful as I have. And yeah, man, I'll see you guys next week. Deuces.